Hello, we are live. We are now streaming this on the YouTube. Okay, so let me just open a document. Alright.
Finally got the pleasure of getting the debate with Mahatab Khandaker in the same debate. Feels good.
I mean, yes, you can very well say that.
আরে বালের ডিবেট শুরু করা
Yeah, sure, good to see. Alright, so
Tahrima was
now,
so done with us.
no, it's not even Tahrima, it's Matheera. Acha, right, so the motion is this House regards the shift in the Me Too movement from victims sharing their experiences to holding specific public figures to account. Everyone, please mute yourselves except for, I guess, Tahrima, because she's the Prime Minister. Without any further ado,
Do we
following the
have
Prime
POIs
Minister.
or do we not?
Do we have what?
Do we have POIs?
You do have POIs. You just need to unmute yourself for 1 second, ask the POI, and then be out.
Okay, bye.
Okay. I'll be timing, so you don't need to worry about that.
Wait, but like if they give the POI in the group, I'm on my phone. I can't see the
Achana,
group.
no, they won't be asking the POI in the group, so it'll be like this. I'm going to mute myself. POI. Then I'm gonna mute myself again. Therefore,
Yeah, Zahid, you can
You
ask.
choose.
what
Okay,
you
cool.
want
Yeah,
to
I got
ask.
it.
Okay. All right. So I'll be timing. It's gonna be 7 minute speeches. All right. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, so I'm going to start in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, understand in the world where this motion is being applied to, understand the world that we live in, where a motion such as this needs to be passed. We live in a world where a large number of women from all around, all sorts of different countries feel the need to talk about their workplace sexual harassments, the ways they have been treated by the men where they work, the place that they have to go to earn their income. They feel the need to talk about that because they have been wronged. They feel the need for reform because not enough of us know about this. They feel the need to tell us that they are in pain, that their pain is of such great magnitude that they can no longer internalize it, that they can no longer just not talk about it, that they need to come out with it, that they need us to know it, that they need us to recognize their problems, and they need us to form a kind of they need us to reform the policies that are in place, that are supposed to protect them, that are not protecting them. That is the world that we live in. What happens where in this world a movement like this shifts even infinitesimally towards something else that is as untouchable as public figures such as celebrities or the presidents of certain countries or figures of that level? What happens when a movement that's the purpose of which is to bring reform at grassroots levels where women are more or less they're not given that much recognition, their problems are not seen, their problems are not heard? What happens in a movement when a movement such as this shifts in that way? It changes the course of a movement and it changes the impacts of the movement thereby. Why is this a problem? Before getting into that, what is this debate about? The debate is about the Me Too movement itself, what it represents, how it needs to be protected, why it's important, and why the changes that it's bringing is being hampered by what is happening in the shift in conversation about the Me Too movement itself, right? So what is the Me Too movement? The Me Too movement is a movement that was started by holding public figures accountable, such as Harvey Weinstein. It was started from that to bring awareness to the fact that women all over the world are being harassed in their workplace, and they're being harassed in a way because the very definition of harassment, the very definition of torture of women in such ways that they cannot come out and talk about, how that is very ambiguous, how the women cannot use words to phrase it properly and then to come out and to file a case against said person who has harassed them, why this is a problem, and how big of an impact it is having, and how great the scale of this kind of crimes are. That was the purpose of the Me Too movement when it came out to begin with. And then when it gained traction, when women from so many walks of life came out with their ideas of, with their stories of how they had been harassed in a place that they were working in, where they were trapped in that place because that is their income. They cannot leave the work because they're being harassed. They cannot go to HR in fear of being off the promotion list. They cannot talk to it about anybody because they fear of being misunderstood, or they're at fear of being laughed at. They're at fear of being construed as women who are too fickle, women who cannot take, workplace competitiveness. In such ambiguous movements, that the Me Too movement, the purpose of the Me Too movement was to bring awareness to the fact that in such workplaces, what exactly is the definition of harassment itself, and how are we getting the definition? We were getting the definition from women from all walks of life telling us what makes them uncomfortable in the workplace, right? So they were telling us, my boss came up to me and he was behind my chair and he was touching my shoulder and he was shaking me while talking to me. And that made me uncomfortable because that moved my body in certain ways that I knew he was enjoying. But this is not something that I can phrase in a file where when I report it to HR or when I report it to police, because this is not important enough to anyone else but me, because I'm the only one who's understanding that is what's happening to me, right? So the purpose of the Me Too movement was to bring awareness to the fact that such ambiguous and such very subtle harassments are taking place in workplace, and that women cannot come out with it, that the scale of this is very high, that there's something needs to be done about it, that there needs to be reform for it, right? What else was the purpose? The other purpose was to bring reform to policies that are already in place. The purpose was to bring media coverage towards this women, to change the way people see women and the role of men in this portrayal of women, thinking that if they come out with workplace harassments, they will ultimately be punished within their workplace. For that, they will either not be promoted or they will be treated significantly differently where they are equally uncomfortable. In such cases, the significance of the Me Too movement, the impacts of the Me Too movements are great, and they cannot be, that they are absolutely, they cannot be diminished, because this is something that needs to be talked about, right? What happens? What problem occurs? Why do we regret bringing public figures into this? Understand something. When we're talking about public figures, we're talking about people who already have a very large group of following, who are fans of said public figures, because they're either celebrities or they're in very high positions in governments or in other workplaces, right? So they already have a very large following. So there are people who believe them, there are people who trust them, there are people who like them because of their public persona. And more than that, we have to understand that public figures such as this have a bigger platform for getting their voices heard. So when you hold these public figures to account for specific things that happen to you at, say, a concert, or at like when you met them at a party, the reason why this is a problem is because the public figures can actually cause impediment to the movement itself by taking the conversation away from the movement and bringing the conversation towards his public persona. My TPM will talk more about that. That's it.
Right. We thank the Prime Minister for their speech, calling the leader of opposition to open the case for the opposition side. Here.
Yeah. It's gonna be Mahatab Khandaker.
Oh shit. Wait a second. 1 second. 3, 2, 1, start. Before move before moving on to characterization and context and all the arguments, I think it's important to clarify two things, right? Number one, the things that they talk about, right? Like the feeling of needing to talk about the sexual harassment that they face, right? Understand it's important to ask the question that why do they not talk about it, right? Which was told by the first speaker, that they're scared of losing the job, or or like they're scared of getting tangled up in all the bureaucracy and everything, right? So does talking about these experience over social media actually bring those kind of changes, right? Does it actually ensure that women will now go to a police station and report a sexual harassment, right? There was no conclusion of why this is more important than going up against a public figure and creating organic changes, right? And second of all, the whole mischaracterization of the purpose of the hashtag #MeToo movement, right? They tell you that the whole purpose of it was not empowering women, but only so that women have a platform to share their experiences because they feel the need to do so. And then they knife themselves by saying, look, it was actually started by holding public figures culpable, right? That's a total contradiction on their side. But also understand the purpose of the #MeToo movement was not for a platform of sharing experiences. It was for empowering women in and of itself. That's what literally most feminist movements are for. So that a large number of women could clump up and help each other by empowering themselves, by talking about their feelings, by talking about their experiences, and by telling them that it's okay to do so, right? And understand, and third of all, even if it was about talking about it, or all the things that they talk about, right? That it's important for the #MeToo movement so that people get aware that sexual harassment is actually happening. Understand, any normal individual knows about workplace harassment. You don't need a complete movement just for awareing individuals that workplace harassment exists at the end of the day, right? But let's see what we have in our argumentation, right? We think that bringing specific individuals to justice is what's more important for the feminist movement to achieve their goals of empowering women, right? Let's give you a context, right? For example, a public figure, it has a lot of power because it probably has a very important job position and has a lot of social and legal power, right? So who do they actually prey on? These individuals prey on people that are vulnerable, prey on people that has a low income or a needy intern, right? Who are essentially afraid to speak up because of losing a job or because of getting tangled up in the bureaucracy, right? But also understand what makes these specific individuals more powerful at the end of the day. The first thing that they already talk about, right? That they have a backdoor to cry of help. That they probably know the heads of media. They probably know the heads of police. That's what makes them more powerful. And number B, the main reason what makes them extremely powerful is when people assume their untouchability and immunity, right? When people think that we can never go up against them and do something, right? Why is it extremely important to break down this narrative to achieve the things that the #MeToo movement has been working for? It's extremely important because now you are directly telling individuals who are harassing you that we are at war with you. You're directly telling them that we are after you, and that is extremely important. But why does that not happen in your side of the world? Because of a lot of family pressure, right? Because when you share your experience to your family, they probably tell you never to go up against these individuals because guess what? They have a lot of power. They can just send goons and kill and bring down the whole family at the end of the day. And second of all, they probably don't want to lose a very prestigious job that they have right now, not taken. A very prestigious job that they don't have now, right? For example, they work in Google. They would never want to lose that job. And third of all, they don't want to get entangled up in the system of bureaucracy where they have to face tons of more harassment as they go by, right? For example, if you go to a police station, they're probably going to harass you more. They're probably going to be sexist against you. They're probably going to be like, oh my God, you're so hot. Why would they not harass you? Things like that, right? And fourth of all, it's because of the, and this is the most important point, right? They don't do, women don't do anything about these kind of harassment, is because they fear that they're the only one who's going to fight, and they're the only one who's going to suffer if this does not work out, right? And that is the narrative that we want to break. Because understand that the whole purpose of the Me Too movement was to ensure that women could talk about their problems, that women could come up and do something about the things that are happening in workplaces, right? So in Impact, what do we see? In
POI?
Impact, not taken. In Impact, we see
POI?
that women are actually not taken. Oh my God, it's like 6 minutes. We see that women are getting empowered. We see, second of all, we see that every single individual in the workplace, in the streets, know that there's a whole community of people there's a whole community of people who are going after one certain extremely powerful individual, which means that this movement probably has a lot of power, and this movement will not fail. That is the exact reason why we create the most important conclusions. That is where changes are brought and can be brought, because number one, the whole mentality of untouchability and immunity of these people are broken down, and that is why from the hierarchy of people who are untouchable to the hierarchy of people where even in small places small sexual harassment works, we create a voice. We actually create a voice for these women to stand up against themselves, because we are starting to break down the whole system of harassment from the top, and not just scattering around all our voices that will probably be heard but never be resounded on, right? So in conclusion, we empower women, we make more crimes being reported, and we actually mitigate harassment due to fighting the hierarchy from the top at the end of the day. Very proud to oppose.
Nice, POI.
POI now with Tara.
Life is
Hello.
POIs are always para.
Yeah. I mean, not para as in Tara, but like para as in Amar.
Pyara. Acha.
Hello.
Calling the DPM. Yeah.
So can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yep. Whenever you're ready.
All right. One minute. Starting in 3, 2, 1. So Tahrima comes up and says, characterizes the whole motion pretty well, and we do think that yes, the movement started using the public figures, and public figures did bring forth issues on the table, and that is what exactly gets the topic, and it trickles down to the grassroots. And that strategy worked because it starts from top to down, right? But it was never the goal, and to come them and to make sure that the public figures come to justice and come to the legal system was not just the point, right? Me Too is a combination of top-down and bottom-up movement, and it was sparked by an incident from top. But now at this point of this movement, it has caused legalization to change, and it changes how sexual harassment cases are viewed, and it does impact the Me Too movement.
POI, sir.
Later, so I'll start with some of the rebuttals. So Mahathir comes up and Mahatab comes up and says that these individuals or public figures are the ones who have the social and legal power, and and yes, the whole thing started with them. But here's the thing: what does it do? The moment in time you lose sight of these individuals, you lose sight of the main problem, and the main problem is reformation of the legal system and reformation of how things are done. Why did the Me Too movement start in the first place, or what was its goals? Its goal was to change the system, and its goal was to make sure that the women in the regular women who do not have a lot of traction, who women who are not heard in the society, get a voice, and so that they can be vocal about their problems. So the moment in time you give more importance to these individuals or these public figures, you undermine the problems of the regular women who have problems, who are subject to, who are victims of sexual harassment and so on. Right. Now. Now to my argument, it becomes extremely problematic when it becomes about public figures, because when you see that when it becomes about people like Kevin Spacey, for example, it becomes a topic of good versus evil. People tend to choose sides, and it doesn't become a thing that is collectively practiced, but people just think about it as a good and evil thing, right? When a perfectly valid argument of a normal of a regular woman will be undermined by an angry fan, when women will start saying that there are some people on the side of these celebrities or public figures, and when they see the rage of these angry fans, they will stop talking about it in public, which was in the first place the goal of the Me Too movement, right? And
Yeah, sir.
no, later, sorry. So we cannot lose sight, and this is important, because this impact is being heard by focusing on public figures. Like I said, these public figures are good at attention hogging, and it cannot lead to good
Yeah, sir.
reformation, and it cannot lead to anything positive in the future. And here's the thing: because of these backlashes at the public figures, lately we are seeing that the Me Too movement has been kind of losing the traction that it was getting in the first place, right? When it was practiced collectively. Yes, POI.
Don't you think the ultimate purpose of the movement was to enable women to come out and call out their perpetrators?
Yes, it was, but the motion isn't about that. The motion is about shifting the focus from regular women voicing their own problems to some of the individuals, and some of them public figures, right? So only focusing on some of them won't result in something good in the future. Very, very proud to propose.
Yeah, 1 minute left still. We still have 1 minute.
Yeah, I
Oh,
think
I'm done.
Oh, okay. All right. Got it. I thank the Deputy Prime Minister for their speech, calling the Deputy Leader of Opposition. Here, here. That be you, Tajwar.
আমাকে শোনা যাচ্ছে?
Yes. Whenever you're ready, all time.
Can you give me just 1 minute to technical problem হচ্ছে?
Take us 1 minute to drink water.
POI.
Oh wow. My whole room's dark. I'm in the living room and everyone just turned off the light here.
Okay.
And Fardeen, are you playing Rocket League?
Yes, I am.
Wow, that disrespect. Holy shit.
Fardeen, you motherfucker.
Does not even care what Tajwar has to say. Oh, their case ready.
Fardeen, এরকম করিস কেন? আমি কিছু বলতে পারবো না।
Fardeen কি member?
আমি মেম্বার।
Best. Doesn't matter, তুমি যা own goal খাও.
I'm just waiting for Farhan to start.
Hello, Tajwar. Please start when you're ready.
I think this debate has been plagued by a misunderstanding of what regular experiences or everyday experience looks like. Because we think that it's extremely different from what opening government points it out to be. We think that everyday experiences are more along the lines of things like how you get groped on your way to the public bus to your office on a day-to-day basis. These are things like how you get harassed every day when you commute from work to your home, or things like how you get these unwitty, disrespectful, uncomfortable remarks of catcalling when you cross the street. We think that this is in direct contrast with the kinds of accounts and the kinds of experience that we prioritize under our world, which are far more specific, directed towards individuals on whom you can actually concentrate public hatred, and individuals whom you can persecute and show as an example to the other individuals within the movement and also to this broader society in general. First of all, I'm going to be talking about how our world changes the societal narrative of untouchability, which is something Mahatab had extended on, but something that has not yet been that has not been responded to by opening government. Secondly, I'm going to give you a comparative as to what the impacts are in each world and why we win on that ground. But before that, some rebuttal. Opening government's case is based on the fundamental assumption that public figures are extremely hard to bring into account or are extremely hard to persecute because they have huge amounts of fan following and the public opinion is tilted against their favor. Understand this. That in and of itself is precisely what makes them so hard to be caught by individual people in the first place. My leader of opposition has given you layers upon layers of characterization as to how these individuals are powerful, how these individuals can silence the voices of individual victims by threatening to loot, to fire them from their jobs, or by threatening to send goons in their house, and how these individuals can tilt public opinion in their favor if only one individual is filing complaints against them. Note, what does the comparative look like under our world? Under our world, you have hundreds of journalists focusing on evidence as to whether or not this individual is innocent or guilty. You have individuals who are feeling more comfortable to present eyewitnesses or present evidence anonymously to various news organizations that are likely to report on these instances. Understand that this is a far likelier scenario in which the perpetrator, who happens to be a public victim, is caught, because when an entire movement consisting of countless victims, countless journalists are all following this particular case and are all suspicious of your intents, this means that these individuals are far less likelihood to get away. We think that under this instance, we think that our side takes escalate home. On to positive matter. How does this change the societal narrative under our world? Understand that there's a notion of untouchability of public figures. This is a general notion in society that says how people like molesters in public buses will get caught, but the director or the manager is simply so powerful, simply so out of your league that you cannot do anything within your power to stop them or to bring these people accountable. On a secondary layer, we think that this notion of untouchability oftentimes induces fear within the families of the victims. So oftentimes what these families do is that they discourage their daughter or they discourage his or her sister from reporting the harassment by these public figures who are probably very important individuals because they fear the repercussions, which are things like bribery or which are things like, sending wounds to their families. Secondly, oftentimes women simply drop their cases because they grow hopeless, because the societal narrative is that regardless of how much effort you put into your cases, these individuals will never get caught. Thirdly, women are oftentimes told to stay quiet because of the power asymmetry, which means that when you focus your movement on remarks or you focus your movement on experience which are general, you miss the nuances of workplace harassment, like how these women are should simply stay quiet. What does this mean? Let's move on to the comparative now. What happens under their world? Under their world, public figures themselves never have an incentive or a deterrent to stop their actions. Why is this the case? Because understanding the kind of experiences that are prioritized under their world pose no direct threat to anybody's reputation. Sure, harassment on buses, harassment on public places, or catcalling is important, but no one specific person is targeted. And we think that this, in and of itself, reinforces that same societal narrative that open opposition is talking about, which is that normal, regular people can be caught when proper legal action is taken. But apparently, these public figures are so powerful that nothing that you can do within an action can make them accountable. On a comparative, under our world, even if one public figure is caught, it would deter thousands of people in positions of power from committing workplace harassment. Why? Because our discourse of getting actual justice against specific public figures is extremely targeted towards one single individual's reputation. So we think that it's a far greater deterrence when under our world, a powerful manager would think twice before groping a female intern, because he or she knows that the moment the movement gets into that individual's case, it would be extremely harmful for that person's public reputation. Secondly, what happens under their world? Regular people grow complacent when they carry out harassment because they see that public figures are not getting caught. And so they think, oh, I'll probably also not get caught because apparently the discourse that's happening under their world is not something that's specifically directed to my reputation. But we think that we change it under our world when these individuals see public figures getting caught and actually understand the repercussions that come along with that. Thirdly, we think that women themselves can relate more to the discourse that happens under our world. Sure, understand that the reason many women drop their cases is because these women feel helpless against the power of these individuals. The moment these women see that no, powerful figures can get caught, powerful figures can receive justice, do you think that these women feel much more inspired to continue their cases more to those kinds of emotions? And we think that the way to change the societal narrative is to actually give people examples of when power is not enough to hide your crimes of harassment. Very proud to pose.
All right. I thank the deputy leader of opposition for their speech, calling the member of government. Mahathir, right?
Whoa.
Whoa.
হ্যালো, আমি একটু আমার পেপারটা গুছাই, একটু টাইম দাও।
আচ্ছা, you can get 1 minute.
Just ripping off my paper and just arranging it.
আবার রকেট লিগ শুরু। Why do I even have you on stage? কি যে হচ্ছে? somebody wants to die because they can't shit. Another person, guitar noises. And people watching the stream would not get that at all. Right?
You think people are watching this stream? Very
By
optimistic.
আমার
sir.
এখানে আছে 5 viewers. I know 2 of them are me, ওইটা জানি. At least 3 more. I তোমার speech শুনতে আসছে. Please don't make them wait longer.
Okay, there. Okay, can I start?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, you're timing, right? Cool. So, 3, 2, 1. First, let's get the burdens clear. From the government side, our burden is to show that the shift has betrayed the ideals of the Me Too movement, in that it has betrayed its end goals. The end goals being that it's a movement that allows for a minority to showcase their day-to-day difficulties and their oppression. Understand that in the world of opposition, you only have tabloid headlines. That is to say, the nuance in this discussion is that women X has been harassed by individual Y. That is to say that in their world, that tabloid reads as Harvey Weinstein has gotten another sexual harassment case. The woman's name in that headline goes unnoticed. Her experiences go unnoticed. That is to say that in their world, women are not the subject to all of the movement's hatred. It is the men themselves. That is to say that the focus of the movement has shifted to either taking down a specific figure and not the experience and the whole superstructure that led Harvey Weinstein to go on unabated in harassing women worldwide. That's what we're standing against. Second burden from government side is to show that change would occur better without the shift. That is to say that without just, analogous to lipstick feminism, that instead of just patting ourselves on the back when we're getting 1 or 2 people behind bars or changing 1 or 2 people out of their careers, we need actual society-wide change. In my case, in our extensions, we'll be giving you 2 things. First, how the whole system of change occurs and would occur in a world where the shift did not occur. Secondly, a principal justification of the essence of Me Too and why it's better served when victims sharing their experiences were highlighted. And thirdly, the idea of empowerment and the shift and what that allows for women. Right? But before that, a few problems with OO's case. Understand that when we talk about empowerment, and Tajwar himself makes this poignant point when he talks about empowerment, that he only allows for support systems to public figures. That is to say, he runs on a core assumption that normal crimes can be caught. But the tension in his case being that he further on states that, oh, look, this can be inspirations for unreported normal crimes. Understand, the moment we can break this case is by simply pointing out that, look, the manager he talks about will never be caught and never be focused by the movement. Why not? He won't be more focused because he isn't a public figure and isn't getting the traction of the movement. That is to say that when a woman goes on and complains to HR or goes to Twitter and talks about her experiences, the Me Too movement, the hashtag, the trend itself is too bothered with dealing with Casey Affleck or Bryan Singer. That is to say that her voice gets drowned out. That means that in the small bubble of power that the manager operates in, detached from public figures, he sees that he can subjugate the women that he controls. That means that even if powerful figures do get caught, the people in smaller bubbles don't have the full support of the system, don't have a support system that they can talk to, don't have the self-confidence to go to HR and say that they are uncomfortable. That means that because I can't access that lever to the Me Too movement, these normal everyday empowerment doesn't work. Understand that we aren't only talking about crimes. The problem with Tajwar's empowerment on a secondary level is that these are problems of behavior too. That is to say, the normal power parity that he talks about still occurs because guess what? Public figures and celebrities occur at a different power parity than normal people. That is to say, even if we say that Anthony Weiner got caught, even if we say that he got shamed out of office, does that truly translate to my lived experiences? Is something a link we don't see. And that is to say, their empowerment is lesser in scope and only for the privileged few. Understand, if their end goal is success, you don't do that by only taking down 1 or 2 hot shots because your hatred is focused. That's exactly why it dissipates. That is to say, when Harvey Weinstein has been kicked out of his production company, you never understand that in Hollywood there's an epidemic of how women aren't represented in proper roles, how they're completely sexualized. The idea of kicking out producers who are sexist has happened before. It has happened in 1978, in 1984, and it has happened every 20-year intervals, but nothing has changed because we've only taken down a few cogs in that machine and not the whole machine itself. Moving on to our case. Why do we think that when we don't have that shift, we allow for these superstructures of sexism to end? First, why the first movement came about, right? Something that OG doesn't really talk about. Women came together to form a community of weakness. That is to say that they found strength in sharing their issues, the confidence to share their issues no matter how small, the idea that public figures and actively targeting them does not allow for that. That is the mutual exclusivity of this argument. That is to say, because public figures will always hog the spotlight, the togetherness that allowed for women to break superstructures, to go on and say, when women complained about the fact that they were sexually, sexualized in the workplace, when you can go to Twitter and you can talk about it and have 4 other women relate their experiences to you and say, okay, you know what, I found a way to combat this. I found this manner of doing about it. The smaller micro level discussions that can occur in our world when this change does not happen allows for perceptions to be changed, allows for the sexism and the inherent rape culture that women go through, the water cooler conversations to be actively come across, because now the minority who are voiceless have a support system no matter how large. The exclusivity of this argument being that even in OO's best case, even if they take down and they're always on media, the smaller level micro experiences never get talked about. Water cooler conversations still occur about how Harvey Weinstein was an asshole, but he was still a weirdo. Normal men still rationalize their behavior and still go on and subjugate women. And the women who are subjugated don't voice out their opinions because they don't have that support structure to rely on. But let's talk about how this system brings better fulfillment in our world. We tell you that your experiences are valued. You are not used as a prop in a headline to take down another person. That is to say that when you got harassed, when Louis C.K. masturbated in front of you, you tell your story. Your name is remembered. Please, from the other side of the room, tell me the names of the women who got harassed by Harvey Weinstein. You can't. You only talk about the people. That is an insult to the victims themselves. If OO wants to talk about fulfilling the problems of the victims, understand that when you take down Harvey Weinstein, the victims themselves are never highlighted. Their issues, their problems are still going to be gone about by Harvey Weinstein Mark II. They'll still be gone about by people who will go ahead and still suffer the same problems of Hollywood sexism. Why do we create a better society-wide change? Understand the type of stories that get picked up in our world. The stories that get traction is the fact that there are widespread sexual harassment cases and sexual harassment discussions in Hollywood itself, from B-list movies to A-list movies. In our world, it takes longer amount of time for critical mass to be acquired, but that critical mass takes effect at every level of society. It takes effect at every level of the industry that we talk about. It sticks in general society's mind that, look, it is the epidemic of sexism that occurs in society, and not just a few weirdos that we need to take down, a few public figures that misrepresent their ideas. Change occurs better even in their best case, right? In change. Best case, Harvey Weinstein loses his career. It's a big victory, but there are no bigger changes. Louis C.K. hides and he comes back. In our world, in their world, people are likely to go headhunting in higher areas, but only the privileged get protection. Normal people don't. The essence of Me Too is no longer accessible to all. It started as a Twitter movement. It started as a support system. The moment you only hold the high people, sexist superstructures still prevail. My life is undermined. Water cooler conversations are unchanged. I can't access this movement. It has no use to me. Fuck Harvey Weinstein. Fuck all of this.
8 minutes.
8 minutes, 16 seconds.
Amazing, man.
He had a lot of things he needed off his chest, man.
I want to stop Bulwala.
Bye, sing the bell. Bye, we can all hear the bell.
I bell shuni nai. I'm sorry. I was hearing for... I was... এটা কি আমি জানতাম না
It is good practice to time yourself anywhere, but okay.
Fuck you, Zayed.
না বেস্ট বেস্ট ছিল, মজাই লাগছে।
রাইট আমাদের টাইম স্ট্যাম্প করবে when you said fuck you তারপর কালকে তোমার টাইম লাইনে পোস্ট হবে why is
I
Mahatab playing
found
this?
and you're playing Rocket League, so I
No
don't
no
know.
man I am not.
I have it pop up as a notification. Okay. Well, good to know. Lutful is one of the 5 viewers of this stream.
How do you know?
Because Lutful messaged me saying, bro, I am one of the 5 viewers. Shout out to Lutful. Anyway,
What the fuck?
calling the member of opposition.
Oh yeah.
I দাঁড়াও আমার পেজে হারাই গেছে।
এই যে এই মাথিরার স্পিচের পর আমাদের ভিউয়ারশিপ will half. তা লুৎফুল চলে যাবে।
আমার স্পিচে
Man, I so wish that I can pass the ball to myself and score.
Oh my god, Alia is watching as well. Alia is watching using mobile data. What the fuck?
My dedication to debate, something you have never had.
It's actual dedication.
Something I've never had.
I'm not. By আমাদের ভিউয়ারশিপ কি সব গার্লফ্রেন্ড বয়ফ্রেন্ডস?
Zayed, you make us sound like a bunch of sad nerds.
ভাই তোদের ঠেলায় এর জন্য আমাদের ভিউয়ারশিপ নাই, প্লিজ গেট পিপল।
আমরা ভিউয়ার দিবে দেখবো।
আমাদের আসলে হায়ারার্কি করা উচিত and preferences. People, are you in a relationship? If you are, you get preferences in slots in online debate. That's so that tele viewership হবে.
আচ্ছা I'm starting.
Hi, anytime.
3, 2, 1. So the clothing government thinks that women's experiences are ignored and their voices are drowned, right? Understand. First of all, do these women want their names to be highlighted as like in the very first place, right? No, right? Because many of these confessions were nameless. Many of the women didn't want their name to be out in the public, right? These women, what do these women want? They rather want the change in the societal construct that they live in. They want that the thing that happened to them doesn't happen to them anymore, and it doesn't happen to anyone anymore. They don't want the publicization that the CG thinks that they want, right? So they believe that societal change is more important. What is our response to that? Societal change also happens in our world, and it's better tackled in our world when you have such great, powerful people being dragged down, even if just because they did a crime, right? Even if they make a small gesture which did hurt someone's feelings, they were dragged down, right? We think that is very important. They talked about how regular people cannot relate, and there is normal men subjugate women anyways. I understand really showed to you that how already the opening opposition showed to you how deterrence is created, and how due to the great deterrence created, people will be scared and will not be doing it. Understand the talk. We tell you that the large amount of followers that these people have, that these public figures have, is important, right? Because this creates a larger impact. Because many people see and notice the change, and the movement approaches lots of people. We think the media attraction that the movement gets is very important. The opening government gives you a wishy-washy case. It tells you how the ambiguous and subtle micro-level problems are important, and they are ignored in this case. No, they're not ignored. They're rather more emphasized, because now you have people, celebrities, talking about the micro-level harassments that they face, and just even for something so small, they were affected. Now, moving on, let's talk about the angry followers, right? That has been a very important part of the entire case. What happens in the government's world? You have one person standing against one person with so much power, right? And they cannot move up the ladder, and they cannot fight against them. What happens in our world? You have so many people to support you. As Tajwar already said, you have reporters, journalists supporting you. Over that, what do we add on to that? The media attention it brings with it is important, whether it's positive or negative, right? Because the movement itself gets attention, right? People know that the movement is still existent, and it is fighting against such big people, right? Such big characters. We believe that it is important because even if it is negative, even if you have so much of backlash, but the movement is still existent. It shows that this is a current problem and this is a problem that needs to be solved, right? We think that public attention is very important in that case because the movement never loses the attraction. We asked the PR to the opening government that whether calling out the perpetrators was the main aim. They replied yes. When you, like, what do we say to that, right? When you don't have a role models standing up against their perpetrators, how will you have the courage to do so, right? They think that somehow they will gain the courage, gain the strength by seeing their role models just simply share their experiences only on social media with no active measures being taken. Where do you get that courage from, right? When you don't have anyone to look up to. We think that is inherently problematic. What is the motive of this movement in the very first place? Firstly, number one, to reduce to bring the sexual harassments into the limelight, right? And secondly, to make everyone feel comfortable with sharing their experiences and calling out their perpetrators. Now, answering an important question in the debate, that why holding specific public figures accountable is important, right? Please understand that who are these public figures? These are people who have constantly and continuously carried out injustices or have been affiliated with some sort of crime, right? We believe that they deserve to be held accountable, and if we do not start with them, later. So if we don't start with them, we think this movement won't gain the public attraction in the very first place. Understand that these people, due to their immense power, have gotten this chance again and again. We think that they do not deserve this chance anymore, and they deserve to be dragged down right then and there. Secondly, talking about how this reinforces the movement rather than diluting it according to the government bench, right? So, what is the closing opposition stand on this? The movement. What does the movement show to everyone, right? It shows that the world is a safe space for everyone to share their experiences and make the society realize the gravity of the existing the gravity of the problem of the existing sexual abuses, right? What's the use of this awareness if people can't call out their perpetrators in the very first place? The main aim, the main goal of this movement is to get these people punished, right? But understand that the main goal is removing them from the society, and why that is important, right? That's the ultimate goal. But there is no point. We believe from the closing opposition that there is no point just sharing your experiences and telling people how you were hurt or how you faced a problem, right? We believe that the person who caused that harm to you needs to be brought down. We believe that that is the main target of this movement, and rather than just saying that something happened to you, right? Our world rather serves the ultimate purpose better, because other victims can come out and call out their perpetrators, who can eventually get punished, right? Even they believe that even such a person with bureaucratical support got punished, and then even her perpetrator can get punished as well, right? We think that is something we solve in our world. Now, even if thirdly and lastly, talking about even if somewhere fake allegations, wait one second. Ruhan, please যাই এখান থেকে কেন বারবার ডিস্টার্ব করতে আসছো আমি যখন স্পিচ দিই
best live ever.
I always love it.
বারবার রুমে কেন আসছেন মানে
This is the life. This is the life. This is what I do this for.
I muted her to say that.
She has 30 seconds left, technically.
এখন দেখবা ও খেয়াল করে he's been muted or shit.
Oh, shit. So I can't unmute someone, man. They have to unmute themselves. Good job, Fardeen.
Tactical.
Wow. সহ্য করতে পারতেছে না, speech mute করে দিছে। মানে, is this low or not? Man, shut up, man. I would say that no shit. I would say that that's the end of that speech. All right. Anyway, got most of it. All right. Calling the opposition whip. Gov whip. Sorry.
Hello. Thanks.
Thanks. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Yeah. Like, I really don't get why they think under their world reporters or journalists are somehow gonna be on your side. Because honestly, they don't seem to give a shit about what you actually went through, about your sufferings, about your story. The only thing they give a shit about is how big of a public figure they can take down using your story. That means that the importance or weight that's attached to your story depends on how big of a public figure that decided to do that harassment on you, not necessarily based on what your story actually is, not necessarily based on what you had to go through, not necessarily based on the fucking nightmare that you had to live through. If that's their entire case, that for really are going to let that, like, how popular these public figures are determine which stories are worth hearing to. I don't think we should ever be winning this debate in the first place, right? But second, the idea that comes up from closing about how, like, a lot of these people don't want the experiences to be talked about, right? I think that's completely bullshit, right? People do want to share their stories, but historically, the scenario's been something like this, where people who want to share their stories never felt comfortable doing so because of the way that societies were structured or because of the way their stories were always stigmatized. The reason why the Me Too movement came up in the first place is because to counter the stereotypes and the stigma where people were ashamed by their families, by their relatives, and everyone around them for being a victim of harassment in the first place, right? They're ashamed and ostracized just for the fact that they were a victim, right? Where the things like they brought it upon themselves. And they felt demeaned and ashamed of the fact that things like that happened to them in the first place, that they felt completely uncomfortable expressing those kind of things in the first place. The problem isn't that these people don't want to talk about it. The problem is that they've been made to feel like they should never talk about it, to the point where they've always been clamped down upon, at least in regards to these things, right? The reason why, at the end of the debate, these are things that are important, is because when we judge the debate, like overall, right, you should be looking at what Mahathir gave you and why all those things like should conclusively give closing the debate, right? When he comes up and talks about how it changes the tension and shifts the tension away from the stories of the victims and makes it all about the males and makes it all about these popular celebrities, right? And about how it deprives these people of a very important support structure that for the first time in their lives gave them the empowerment and the encouragement to come out and speak their stories, something that never existed in the first place. It's something that's so important in this debate and something that closing just conveniently happened to ignore. Second, when Mahathir comes up and talks about how it's important that, like, these people speak up about these things, because the only moment of time that the only moment of time people's perceptions about the entire thing changes is when they hear these stories, not just from one or two people, but from people who have gone through similar experiences and similar sufferings as them, and they're not afraid to voice out their sufferings, right? When we compare that to what the opening op had to talk about, right? They came up and talked about things like how these everyday experiences that we hear about from side government aren't about the workplace. They're about interactions outside the workplace, in your transit, in your transport services, and all those things like that, right? Well, we don't think that's true, because a large part of your everyday interactions is constituted by your experiences at the workplace, is constituted by the type of trauma and sufferings that opening up and closing up were so bothered to identify and focus on, right? The only reason why we have people who even bothered in the first place to come up and speak out against CEOs or speak out against public figures is because for the first time, these people were actually empowered to speak about something that they believed in and something that hurts them to that extent. Because not only were they not ashamed of it anymore, but they were given that safe structure, that support space through which they could express for the first time in a platform what they actually felt. If we didn't focus on their stories, ladies and gentlemen, this debate today wouldn't have happened in the first place, because none of these people would have ever had the courage to come up and speak against their perpetrators, those invisible perpetrators that opposition is so worried about in this debate, right? But again, the reason why even those perpetrators are that important in the context of this debate, right, is because the type of perpetrators they identify in terms of the managers and the CEOs aren't really the people who are take the fall due to this kind of motion that comes from their side, right? It's the public figures and the celebrities. And most often times these managers aren't really in the spotlight, right? Their stories of managers harassing their employees are probably less attractive stories right now under their model, because these managers aren't probably as popular or as a big of a public figure as they're likely to be. Under our world, all those stories the opposition is worried about or wants to be expressed, right, about these people being invincible, are the everyday interactions that we highlight through the expression of their stories. Look, at the end of the day, the debate becomes about this. From their side, or from the overall public perspective in general, this becomes an issue, not about changing, changing the minds of people who are sexist or stopping harassment, but it becomes about taking down that one person who's always been put on a pedestal. The problem with that is at the moment of time that one person is taken down, you move on from the troubles and the stories and the sufferings of all those people who have had to suffer all those kind of things, because suddenly their story becomes way less important. Suddenly their story doesn't seem to matter as much anymore. All the while thousands of other stories just get pushed to the sidelines. But more importantly, the ultimate objective just becomes about taking that one person down, right? And guess what? When you take that one person down, apparently it seems like you guys have become successful. It seems like the movement has become successful. But what it ignores is that one person doesn't make up the movement. It's about hundreds of thousands of people throughout society who have done this harassment over ages and ensure that these people haven't had a safe place to begin with. The only way we change all that is by changing perceptions, not by making people think that the fight's over the moment of time you have taken that public figure down.
I thank the whip calling the last speaker of this debate, the opposition whip. Here.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Give me a moment.
All right. A home Rocket League for sure.
All right, starting in 3, 2, 1. Okay. We'd like to proudly oppose because of the following 3 reasons. We do believe that teaching the common people that not accepting harassment is very important, and you need to understand this, and you need to be. Am I still audible?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
They need to be, the common people need to hear the stories about the people, the celebrities, the common faces, and what they're doing is wrong, and sexual harassment is not okay. And we also do believe in that the more the coverage, the better, and also because of the fact that taking away the aura of invincibility that some sexual harassers do get, that's very important to take it away. Before moving forward, I would like to rebut some of the arguments the closing government had made. They talked about that the people, the press, do not actually care about the stories of the people that are being covered in the media. Actually, it does not matter what the people of the press actually do or don't care about. What really matters is what the readers care about and what the readers actually decide to do with the information and the truth. They talk about that it's depriving the people, the ordinary people of a stage. I do believe that it's not depriving them, but it's actually letting them know that this is the fruition of the hard work that you've been doing. You've been coming up to movements, coming up to stages and telling your story, and look at what you have done. Look at, imagine the more that can be done through movements such as this. They also talked about the small stories being hidden. We have to think how the media actually works. The media will always go after bigger stories. What would you rather hear about? Casey Affleck getting an Oscar and Louis C.K. going on another tour. The thing is, these celebrities are going to be covered regardless whether or not it's positive or negative media coverage. But the fact is the way we can use the movement such as the Me Too movement to highlight the abuse and the sexual harassment and aware the common people that yes, you can get help if you want to. Now that is something that's very important. The whole case of the government from opening to closing has been the change of impact. They think that the impact is negative, while I think that the impact is very positive. Now, while they've talked about people getting abused, people who are getting abused in buses and other stuff, according to Dhaka Tribune, I believe that it's around 92% of women get harassed in transportation every year in Bangladesh. But the standing fact is most of them don't think it's necessary to aware other people or they don't consider it necessary to oppose. Now, one of the speakers of the government talked about that we can't actually name a people or someone who has actually been harassed because all we need is tabloid headlines and stuff. That's not true at all. We only talk about women victims, female victims and stuff. But you have to think about what you have to consider is the Me Too movement has also given platform to all sort of victims. For example, you talk about Kevin Spacey. I love the guy. I'm a huge fan of the guy. I love The Usual Suspects. I'll always love the character Kaiser Soze. But the thing is, I still love him. I still love the artistic side of Kevin Spacey. But what the Me Too movement has shown me is I have to differentiate between the artist and the criminal. The Me Too movement made me realize, taught me that the most of the harassers of Kevin Spacey were actually men. He was harassing young men of that office sets, and we would have never heard about it if there was no Me Too movement. And coming from my own experience, we live in a society where the sexual harassers often don't get pointed out. Coming to a story of my own, when I was playing in a playground football, I was once bullied by a guy who was touching my genitals and stuff. And at that time, I didn't know a guy could do that to me. But now I do. That's not bullying. That's just basic bullying. That's also sexual harassment. But for the common people like me, who don't get exposed to news like those sexual harassments of a continuous basis, we don't get to know that we can have a platform to speak ourselves, and that is the core point of the Me Too movement, is to give a platform to the common people to become the voice of the voiceless, and getting the extra media coverage through pointing out celebrities and people of power lets us know that nobody is actually above the law. This is not centralizing the attention towards them, but in my opinion, it's actually diversifying the things that could be done if those media coverage is given, if that media coverage is used in a positive manner. The whole goal of the Me Too movement was to change the system and pointing out the people in authority, pointing out the people of power, and pointing out that they are doing wrong things and they cannot do this. No matter how powerful they are, he is a part of this thing. It's a positive impact that the whole thing is the whole ordeal is a positive manner of shedding light into sexual harassment and other sorts of harassment. We're not actually undermining the regular people. We're actually giving them a bigger stage. Our argument is nobody's in the broader spectrum, the victims who are speaking out against these celebrities, they're not actually glorifying themselves. They're not trying to get money out of their scenarios. What they're trying to do is they are trying to put into light those people, those harassers who have the largest of platforms. Let me emphasize on my point. The celebrities often get to harass the most. The powerful people often get to harass more people. They get to harass more victims. The normal abusers. And for example, Kevin Spacey harassed over 80 people over the course of his acting career. The thing is, these people create these victims. They not only create victims, but these victims in the long run become abusers themselves. So cutting down this chain of mass abusers is also very important. And the thing is, if I want to compare and sum up our whole argument, that is, if you look at the broader spectrum, then I don't think that pointing out these celebrities and pointing out these people people of power is actually a bad thing, because it's actually shedding more light on the common people and educating people like us that sexual harassment is not okay, and we need to voice our opinions and we need to shed more light on this. Thank you.
I thank the opposition web for this. That was the last speech in this debate. I'll be turning off the live stream now as we go into judgment.
Now I can peacefully